I was drawn to this game by the art, to be honest. I like a colourful game, my lizard brain see pretty picture, and that's all it takes for me. It describes itself as a story-driven adventure game. It runs in Unreal Engine, I had to dig into SteamDB to find that one, and it's made by Team Jivana, which is the name taken by the group of students that made it as part of the course at Supinfo Game Rubica, a French school of animation and video game design. If the name sounds vaguely familiar to you, and you've watched any of my prior videos, this is where the game Atma came from. Of course it was different students, but they're from the same school. It enters into a menu with gentle music and nice colourful scenery. There's an option for New Game, Level Select from the intro, Alma's Decision, Canyon Entrance, Everard's Thoughts, and Graham's Doors. There's an options menu with gameplay settings from the UI and audio languages. There's a choice for English or French. There's an axis inversion, colourblind mode for deuteranope, protanope, and tritanopes. I've added a handy guide for understanding, and a severity scale for the colour blindness. There's an option for rumble, text colours and background, subtitle outlines, and there's a preview box to make sure that you can read the story. In the audio section there's general, music, voice, effects. There's a video section with resolution and some other settings. Controls are WASD, space to jump, F to skip dialogue, and finally there are credits reassuring you that this is definitely a French game, and there appear to be 19 creators with 8 voice actors, as they have different ones for the English and the French voices. You get a narrated intro when you start the game. Jivana is a goddess, and the people who worship her nominate a priestess to her, and they perform a ritual to do so. Your character, Aelis, is chosen as the priestess and given the gift of controlling water. Then suddenly a big scary vortex appears and starts to chase down the tribe that you're a part of, and everyone decides to leave. The elder in charge of the tribe, and conveniently your grandma, tells everyone about a cathedral that will keep everyone safe because it's sacred. So that's where the story starts, and you take over control of Aelis. Immediately I tested the camera, which seems to spin when you get close to objects and doesn't always fully turn back. I started with mouse and keyboard because I felt like this game was going to be more comfortable with controller, and I thought I'd get at least a little bit of time in to see how the controls compared. The camera never lands at an angle where you can't see where you're going, and if you move to a new area it will try and readjust itself, though it might stay a bit side-on when you're trying to go forwards. In places it can clip through rocks too, but this isn't a pressing issue. Aelis will climb up rocks even if you don't jump, if they're small enough, and very quickly you get your first mechanic. You can spray water on plant buds to insta-grow them into vines that you can walk on. You press left mouse or right trigger to lock on, then either drag with the mouse or pull the right stick in the direction you want the vine to spawn in. The vines are omnidirectional so long as they don't collide with other objects. The vines lock you on as you walk on them and have a specific tiptoe animation. You can jump off them, but it takes a bit of effort and persistence unless you legitimately jump into a space or something whilst platforming. You can undo vines that you've grown to change their direction. The short first segment leads you into a dialogue scene where Alma and a dude named Everard with a very big coat argue about the route that they'll take to the cathedral. Alma, with her spirituality, believes everyone should take the path that is the pilgrimage route to the cathedral, even though it's rocky, and Everard argues that the animals are tired and the wagon's weak, so they won't survive it. But much like with many arguments, the old lady wins. Some dialogue segments in the game are manually skippable with a toggle to swap between manual and auto, whereas some dialogue segments are just automatic with no toggle choice at all. I tended to get FPS drops between cutscenes or levels. It would take a little while to load some in, but I'm not sure why. There were at least sound effects in some of them though to reassure me that at least something was happening. The party then gets stuck by a big door that you have to go open by climbing up a mountain to free the river to run to the bottom. At this point I quit, and then realised of course that there is no continue or save option, so if you want to play this game it's a one-shot attempt because there are no breaks. There is of course the level select in the menu to mitigate that, and at least in this game there's not really any progression that you lose by chopping up levels, so it's not too painful. I came back and started the mountain climb, winning a new mechanic of making a blue plant bud bigger so that it could launch me. You can, I realised eventually, change the direction of these buds just like you can change the vine directions. It's hard to tell though, because with the vines you get a ghost image of where the vine will spawn as you hold left mouse or RT and drag in the direction. But the blue buds seem not to be able to hold, and if you press LM or RT and choose a direction, the bud will accept that direction even if you don't fully want it. You can of course change it, but the direction is indicated by the leaves on the top of the bud, and I didn't figure that out at first. I was also introduced to an altar and told that there were 5 to activate. These are essentially collectibles that encourage you to explore the area and are usually hidden away, but they give you an achievement if you get them all. You then get the most fun power in the game, which is the water surfing power. You can skid around on the water surface like Jesus at a skate park, and if you hold A, you can charge a jump and spring yourself off the water. It's a smooth power to control and works really well, and you use that to get you the final bit to the top and open the gate so that you can carry on. You get a couple more cutscenes saying that there are issues with the carts in a quagmire and the animals are tired, but nothing comes of it and you end up in the camp where you have a little chat with Everard. Level 2, you get stuck at another set of doors, and once again you have to go open them. You gain the waterfall surfing power this time, unfortunately only applying to specific waterfalls and not all of them. And it's an easy one because you jump at a waterfall and then press A when the camera telegraphs for you to jump, and that's kind of it, really. I got stuck for the first time, really, on this level because I'm sure that there should have been something else to help me. I got to a platform, had to get around a corner to progress, but also opposite me was an altar that I needed to reach. Through a window, I made a path to the altar with a vine, which was mostly covered. There was only one direction the vine could go in, I tried the other ways, but on the platform that I could easily reach, there was nothing to help me get around the corner. Of course, my usual tactic is then to try and break the game before I run out of ideas. I didn't officially do this, however, by rubbing my face against a wall long enough and falling to my death, I somehow got myself respawned right next to the altar I was trying to reach, and then I could use the vine to get to the next area. Cheating, hell yeah. There were 3 altars in this area, which weren't too tricky to find, and not too long later I got the gate open again. The vortex was closing in and the weather changed to match it, with rain starting to fall and people yelling at you with urgency. This is then followed by a really nicely done escape sequence. The vortex catches up and you have to outrun it using all your skills. It gives you different paths in some areas to choose from, and also you get flashes of the rest of your tribe trying to outrun it also, with the camera perspective changing in different areas and always giving you the feeling that you're trying to get back to them out with the narration telling you that anyway. On finishing that sequence, you reach the cathedral and then get sad because it looks decrepit, and also Everard got caught by the vortex, but Aelis talks of hope, and then the narrator talks of Aelis talking of hope, and then the story just ends. I've been vaguely glossing the story on purpose thus far so that I can talk about it together, because for a narrative-driven game, unfortunately the narrative is a bit holy. I mean, yes, the story does drive the gameplay, but there are inconsistencies. First of all, in the very beginning, Everard says that the wagons and animals won't hold up to the journey to the cathedral. Suddenly, in the next cutscene, it's been 6 entire months since that journey started, and the wagons and animals are still tired, but hell, they've held up this far. The next cutscene, after level 1, everyone gets panicky about a quagmire, and the game adds some tension in that the carts are finally showing some instability and the animals are also tired again, and you offer to hold up the back so the whole thing doesn't fall apart, and then the game just kills that tension by skipping straight into the camp where everything is fine, and missing the entire quagmire situation and anything you did to help out. Again, you get stuck at a door in the next cutscene, but originally everyone said the road was rocky, so unless you've missed all of the rocky parts within that 6 months that they didn't show you, somebody's lying, because most of the route looks like fresh, lush grass to me. You have a chat with Everard about how he has tension with your grandma, and this chat is very short, and I assume it's there to try and connect you to Everard before he gets dragged into the void, but I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't really that much for me to get attached to him. I mean, your character is attached to him, so that's fine, I guess, it makes sense. Then you open the second door and you get chased by the Vortex, and you keep saying that you have to save everyone from it by getting to them, and then finally when you do get to them, they once again kill all of the tension built in the chase scene by showing you doing absolutely nothing to help anyone, but the storm is suddenly gone, so hooray I guess. Not sure what your water powers did to save everyone from the storm, or if they did anything at all, and if they did, then why didn't you do it 6 months ago instead of being driven out of your village, but anyway. I mean, the storm was literally right behind you, its purple mist biting at your heels, but it just vanishes, and all the rain and the darkness disappears out of nowhere without any explanation. Did your escape somehow take you slightly out of the path of it, and it just went straight past you and left you alone? If that's the case, why didn't you just dodge it in the first place anyway? Then you get to the Cathedral and everyone thinks Goddess has forsaken them, and then once again it tries to build a bit of investment in the all hope is not lost, Aeolus will find what the storm is and give everyone hope, and then the game ends. If there's one thing I love about stories and games, it's not being shown key story parts, but just having the game tell me, oh, and also that happened, trust me dude, don't worry about it. What, you want me to show you? No. Some cutscenes, interactable or not, to show you what you actually did in these situations, i.e. how you helped the carts through the quagmire, or how you protected everyone from the Vortex, would have been nice to fill in those gaps, and maybe pay off on the tension that you tried to build in the script and the gameplay. Generally though, the game is pretty good. The visuals are really nice and pretty, but also work for the darker portions with the Vortex hanging around. The character model is good. They didn't really invest in more than a 3D shadow outline for Alma and Everard in cutscenes, and they have 2D character art for each of them for the written story, which is good. The animations are good for the vines, the surfing, and for controlling the water. It's very fluid, makes you feel like Katara. The sound effects all matched and were good, the voice acting was very good, and the visual effects on the powers were good. Environments are colourful, and whilst the bushes don't really interact with you, the grass and trees do wave and have movement to bring it all together. The level design is pretty good, not too difficult to navigate with the platforming. The altars are good motivation to explore, and whilst they were heavily similar assets with the white and gold materials, the two levels did feel vastly different, and the view, particularly in the first level, was really nice at some parts in the wide open spaces. As said, I liked the chase sequence and the way that it was designed, that your route either paralleled or crossed over the route that the rest of your group was taking, so that you got a view of them as you progressed. The music is fantastic, it's gentle and fits the atmosphere in the beginning and really helps ramp up the chase scene while staying in a similar theme. There are a couple of wobbles in the frame rate at times and a little bit of joltiness in places. I also had one part in the Vortex chase sequence where I was supposed to slide into a river, but because I jumped before the slide, it somehow considered it a death. But other than that, it was generally pretty stable and the mechanics worked well. The platforming isn't massively varied, but it is easy to do, and whilst the difficulty doesn't go too far, it is at least fun. It took me about 40 minutes to complete in full with all the altars and a pause or two for notes, so it's a decent duration considering I didn't really get stuck anywhere per se. My gut feeling after playing it is that the game either had to get cut short to meet deadline, or that they had a bit more of a demo attitude towards it, since the abrupt cut-off at the climax of the story seemed a bit weird, and usually the default for games like this is a 3-level or a 5-level format, so the fact that there's only the intro, which I guess you could count as a level, and 2 actual levels, makes it feel like there's a part missing. It's a good enough narrative to carry the game, but the actual gameplay and mechanics were the best part to the game, so it seems they put all of their eggs in that basket rather than focusing hard on story sense and continuity. In that sense I'm conflicted, because they're selling it on Steam as story-driven. By technicality of the meaning of the words, it is, since the story gives you purpose for the gameplay. However, this is true for a very large proportion of games. It's only games that are centred on high scores, skill progression and levelling that very often don't care about having backstory. The mention of story-driven implies that the story is a key part, but with it being so wholly, it seems a bad place to lean your weight, especially when the actual adventure part is the better done, more visually appealing and consolidated, and the more enjoyable portion. I'm going to give Jivana a 7.5 out of 10, which feels a tad generous, but it has some very nice segments and it's a well put together game on the whole.